we've already taken a good look at Europe during World War II, and a lot of y'all might have been saying, okay, it involved most of the countries in Europe. What was going on in Spain? Spain's obviously a significant country in Europe. And the simple answer is that by the outbreak of the official outbreak of World War II in 1939, Spain was in no position to participate in any significant way because it had just emerged from its own extremely bloody civil war. So you have from 19, let me write this in a color. You have from 1936 to 1939, you had the Spanish Civil War. Spanish Civil War. And the Spanish Civil War was, at its essence, a conflict between the left and the right. The left represented by the Republicans, and the right represented by the Nationalists, And if you want to get a very high-level sense of what they each represented, the Republicans were actually the democratically elected government. Spain was established as a republic for the second time, became a republic in 1931, and it had elections. And in the 1936 elections, the leftist Popular Front comes to power. And it wasn't, all of this didn't just happen all of a sudden. In the run-up to the 1936 elections, through the 30s, you have this constant tension, this escalating polarization between left and right. And just to get a sense, a very high-level sense of what they represented, the word Republican in its most general form really means, or republic, refers to any form of government in which you do not have a monarchy in control. It could be a full representational democracy in which there is broad power spread amongst the people, or it could be something in between where maybe a smaller subset of people have power, or it's more of an indirect democracy, or whatever you want to say it. But a republic is anything that does not involve direct control by a monarchy. And if you think about the leftist Popular Front, it was sympathetic to the ideas coming out of the Soviet Union, sympathetic to the ideas of communism. It was quite anti-religion in particular, or was kind of anti the traditional institutions, both the monarchy and the church. Spain was and is a Catholic country, and so it was not friendly to the Catholic Church. And on the other side, you have the nationalists. And the nationalists, I guess you could say, are the opposite. They're vehemently anti-communist. They are pro-monarchy. They are pro-Catholic Church, or at least in Spain, they're pro-Catholic Church. They have ideas of kind of a Bolshevik, a communist Jewish Masonic conspiracy. So you can imagine these folks right over here had a lot in common with Hitler and the Nazis, and also fascist Italy. And the nationalists included fascist elements. Some historians will also refer to the nationalists as fascists, although there's some dispute about how fascist they were, or whether they were officially fascist or whatever else. But they had a lot in common with fascist Italy. Fascist Italy under Mussolini, and Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. So Nazi Germany. And not only did they have a lot of kind of philosophical alignment with the ultranationalists in Germany and in Italy, they were supported by by Hitler's regime, and they were supported by Mussolini on the nationalist side. So you have this outbreak of civil war where you have the democratically elected leftist Popular Front. The nationalists don't like it. They're initially under the control of this gentleman right over here, Jose Sanjurjo. I'm not good with pronunciations, but he dies shortly after the rebellion, the civil war begins, and he kind of dies in a fairly ironic way. His plane crashes because it was carrying too much luggage. It was carrying his luggage, and he was even warned before getting on the plane that, hey, I don't know if it's a good idea for you to carry all of this luggage. And his reply, or at least what I've been able to find, what history has recorded as his reply, is, I need to wear proper clothes as the new caudillo of Spain. And the term caudillo is kind of like I'm going to be the strong man or the ruler of Spain. And it's analogous to the word Führer in German or Duce in Italian. So, this guy is saying, oh, I'm gonna take control of this country. I need to wear proper clothes. Those clothes cause his plane to crash. And so once he's gone, the leader of the Nationalist Front becomes Francisco Franco. And Francisco Franco, and I encourage you to read more. This is an overview video of his life. He is able to lead the nationalists to a victory in the Spanish Civil War. But it is an extremely, extremely bloody civil war. Estimates are that between 200 and 500,000 people were killed in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. And just to have some perspective, this is in a country that at the time had a population of about 25 million people. So we have 500,000, that's what 1/50th of the population died. This isn't even talking about people who were imprisoned, people who were had to leave their homes, people who might have been refugees, people who might have been casualties in other ways. So an extremely, extremely bloody civil war. And if you really want to get a tangible sense for what war is like, but specifically what the Spanish Civil War was like, I encourage you to read For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. And Ernest Hemingway actually was a reporter in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. So to a large degree, he had firsthand observations of the Spanish Civil War. This book is not autobiographical, although it's based on his experiences. But it's actually it's one of the books that I've read that really, at least in my brain, gave me a richer picture of how horrible war could be, or at least certain aspects of war. And it takes place in the mountains a little bit north of Madrid. And just to have kind of a little bit more cultural context, this was a painting that Salvador Dali created in 1936 as he saw this imminent civil war emerging. And like many Salvador Dali paintings, it was quite trippy, I guess is the best word. It's kind of this distorted human being. It was called Soft Construction with Boiled Beans, and then in parentheses, Premonition of Civil War. So this had wide-ranging cultural impacts, many of which we even kind of appreciate today with works like For Whom the Bell Tolls and Dali's paintings. But Francisco Franco, he's able to take control of Spain. The war ends in 1939. Once again, he was aligned with the Nazis. He was aligned with the fascists. But by the time World War II breaks out in 1939, Spain's in shambles. He's in no position to in any significant way, aid the Axis powers. And frankly, the first few years of his regime, he's just continuing to consolidate power in a fairly brutal way. In the first 5 years, the fewest number of executions that occurred in Spain was 50,000 executions per year. And this is in a population of, once again, well, at this point, roughly 25 million. And Francisco Franco is able to remain in power for a long time, all the way through 1975. And at first, you can imagine, because he was aligned with Italy and Germany, the Allies weren't enthusiastic about his regime. Spain was not a founding member of the UN. But as soon as the Cold War started to go in more full fashion after World War II, you have this guy who is super anti-communist. You can imagine that the United States and the West, they kind of held their noses a little bit and said, all right, well, we didn't like this guy during World War II, and we don't agree with a lot of how he runs his country. But hey, he's anti-communist, and we're trying to get together everyone who's anti-communist. And so he was able to. The West did bring them a little bit more into alignment, and they were able to become part of NATO. And the kind of nationalist Spain, Francisco Franco's regime, really didn't start to end until his death in 1975, at which Juan Carlos became king again. But then he helped shepherd the transition to a full democracy in Spain, and you have the Constitution of 1978. So anyway, big picture, just so you have a sense of what was going on in other parts of Europe during World War II, just as Hitler was militarizing or really militarizing at the end of the 1930s, preparing for his aggressive actions, you had this extremely, extremely bloody civil war in Spain that put in power Francisco Franco for a long time to come.